We look up at the sky and think it is empty. But right now, something invisible is tearing itself apart to keep you alive. If that invisible barrier fails, the atmosphere catches fire with radiation. And the terrifying part is that we know it has actually happened before. We rely on a magnetic shield we cannot see. But 42,000 years ago, that shield turned off. This is what happens when the sky breaks. Deep beneath your feet, thousands of miles down, a liquid iron ocean is boiling. It is a heavy, spinning engine the size of Mars. The convective turbulence within Earth's liquid outer core generates our geodynamo. It projects a massive, invisible magnetic field far out into the hard vacuum. This magnetic field deflects the constant, heavy impact of solar winds and galactic cosmic rays. Without it, life on the surface simply ceases to exist. For a long time, researchers did not know how fragile that geodynamo actually was. Then, a logging crew found an ancient fallen tree. In the peat bogs of Northland New Zealand, loggers unearthed a massive subfossil Agas australis. It is more commonly known as a kauri tree. Kauri trees are massive giants. They can live for thousands of years, growing to massive proportions. When they fall into the bogs, they are preserved. Because these specific bogs are highly anaerobic, the wood never rots. It becomes a highly resolved internal calendar of ancient, heavily irradiated breathing atmospheres. The wet mud acts as a time capsule. It seals the wood entirely away from oxygen, preventing bacteria from breaking down the biological material. Radiocarbon dating calculates exactly how long a biological entity inactive, but the Ngahua log gave us something different. It gave us atmospheric alarm. The tight rings of this specific specimen recorded a massive chemical anomaly. It gave us the exact date the sun almost completely overwhelmed our atmosphere. Exactly 42,350 years ago, atmospheric radiocarbon surged. We measured this extreme isotope anomaly mathematically as delta 14C. The data revealed a staggering peak, 782 parts per thousand above baseline, happening precisely 41.8 thousand years ago. The magnetic field is the primary physical modulator. When intense radiation hits the upper atmosphere, it creates heavy carbon-14 isotopes. This sudden, exponential increase in carbon-14 inside those ancient tree rings means only one thing. Earth's magnetic shield was rapidly and forcefully collapsing. We call this sudden, total system failure the Adams event. It stripped away our invisible armor, and it left the entire planet completely exposed. The magnetic poles did not just casually flip, the entire system crashed. This is the brutal difference between a clean reversal and an excursion. During the Laschamps Excursion, the primary axial dipole essentially vanished. It was an aborted reversal that completely destroyed the planet's main defense against space. The total magnetic field intensity plummeted to an unfathomable 0 to 6% of modern levels. The entire shield was gone for hundreds of years. When a major magnetic excursion happens, the poles actively splinter. You do not just have one north and one south. Multiple, weak poles emerge everywhere. A regular compass would be completely useless. The needle would spin aimlessly or point to the equator. The architecture of the shield was fundamentally broken. We know this because the kauri trees are not the only witnesses. The ice at the bottom of the world recorded the exact same violence. Ice cores extracted manually from Greenland and Antarctica corroborate the massive loss of the shield. They show a 40% influx of rare cosmogenic isotopes. Dangerous beryllium-10 and chlorine-36 literally rained down on the surface of the planet. We were completely naked against the hard vacuum of the solar system. Without the magnetic field, high-energy protons struck the upper atmosphere, directly initiating energetic particle precipitation. These high-velocity protons violently ionized nitrogen and oxygen, creating chemical radicals that catalyzed the destruction of our vital ozone layer. With the ozone shredded deep into the mid-latitudes, the planet abruptly lost its shield against deadly ultraviolet radiation. The ozone layer, our fragile sole defense against UV radiation, was systematically hunted down by energetic particle precipitation. While air blocks UVC and UVA causes rapid aging, UVB directly damages the genetic sequence inside living cells. A weak magnetic field is dangerous enough on a normal day. But advanced atmospheric models reveal the true catalyst was waiting quietly in the dark. The Sun is an incredibly volatile star. And right when Earth's shields were entirely down, the Sun released a massive, overwhelming wave of boiling plasma. An extreme solar particle event struck the Earth head-on. It flooded the globe with hard radiation and surged the global UV index by 25%. This drastic increase in atmospheric radiation caused solar-induced DNA damage rates in all living things to spike massively, jumping by 40 to 50% globally. The sky essentially turned into a massive microwave. Anything staying out in the direct sun was slowly and systematically degraded at a microscopic cellular level. This brings us to the bodies. Exactly when the sky broke, an entire species of archaic humans vanished forever from the freezing European continent. Cross-referencing the magnetic collapse with precise new radiocarbon dating of the Eurasian Neanderthals reveals a chilling, undeniable overlap. They were rapidly running out of time. The end of their specific tool-making tradition sits firmly at 41,000 years ago. This maps perfectly onto the violent peak of the Laschamps Excursion. Neanderthals were already heavily stressed by shifting, freezing climates. Suddenly, they were bombarded with inescapable UVB radiation from a fundamentally broken and highly toxic atmosphere. But anatomically modern humans somehow survived the exact same evolutionary bottleneck. And the archaeological record strongly suggests they did it by hiding deep underground. Around 42,000 years ago, there is a sudden, synchronous global explosion of deep cave art and the extremely heavy use of natural red ochre. Some historians romanticize this as a beautiful artistic awakening. The raw physics suggest humans were retreating into subterranean refugia to escape the lethal daytime radiation. They were painting the cave walls because it was safe inside, and they used thick red ochre as a primitive UV sunscreen to survive outside. In the southern hemisphere, the Adams event shifted global wind patterns, driving severe, unstoppable continental aridification across the entire Australian landmass in a short time. This immediate, massive climate shock coincides perfectly with the precise extinction window of massive, ancient beasts like the Diprotodon and giant, heavy-set, short-faced kangaroos. Science is never just a single, simple thread. Not all researchers agree that the massive magnetic drop was the sole, definitive killer of the megafauna. Some paleoclimatologists point instead to Heinrich Event 4, a massive influx of ice-rafted marine debris in the North Atlantic that heavily disrupted vital ancient global ocean currents. This completely separate event deeply froze Europe, severely compounding the misery. Other academics argue the megafauna were simply victims of a highly organized human hunting blitzkrieg. The exact ratio of the specific blame is heavily debated. But the undeniable fact is that the massive magnetic shield fell, and millions of things died. We treat the Adams event like a profound historical event permanently locked away in the rings of ancient fossilized trees. But the planetary engine never actually stopped shifting. Over the past 160 years, the global geomagnetic dipole has steadily weakened by 9%. And that terrifying decay rate is actively speeding up. Current geophysical models clearly show the shield decaying at roughly 5% per century. The liquid outer core is actively experiencing highly chaotic turbulence all over again. This magnetic decay is not spread evenly across the planet. It is localized in a massive, rapidly expanding zone stretching directly from South America to Africa. We call it the South Atlantic Anomaly. Magnetic field strength here drops drastically, actively mimicking the initial, terrifying stages of a complete transitional geomagnetic polarity phase. We do not have to guess what happens in this rapidly weakening zone. Satellites actively passing through the anomaly already experience the harsh, highly radioactive reality directly. Spacecraft are impacted with sudden, severe increases in galactic cosmic rays and highly trapped protons. This causes extremely frequent hardware system anomalies and severely accelerated orbital decay. Even the Hubble Space Telescope has to routinely shut down its most delicate sensory equipment when passing through this zone. The raw radiation is simply too intense. Right now, it just quietly disrupts sensitive electronics in orbit. But if this current decay accelerates into a full excursion, the localized radiation will expand globally. The geodynamo is a cyclical, highly dynamic planetary mechanism. The Adams event was not an anomaly. It was just one heavy tick of a very quiet clock. In 1859, a massive solar storm reached the Earth. It heavily impacted telegraph systems. But back then, we actually had a fully functioning magnetic shield protecting us. Imagine a Carrington-level event reaching a planet with an actively collapsing magnetosphere. The electrical grid would completely shut down, but that would honestly be the least of our problems. The atmosphere would begin experiencing massive structural displacement. The ozone would degrade entirely, and the surface would flood with raw, systemic cellular radiation all over again. We have better scientific instruments now. We have far better math. We can see the intense radiation coming from the sun long before it actually hits the ground. We know exactly what happens when the geodynamo stutters. We know what the sun will do to an unprotected atmosphere. The heavy data is entirely clear and undeniable. But when the massive anomaly finally covers the Earth and the sky directly above us becomes a weapon, where will we hide?